Welcome to K-State Research and Extension's First Friday call. The purpose of the First Friday call is to increase the local community's knowledge of the experts, the education, and the economic resources available to help small businesses and entrepreneurs, and to share innovations in community development. As always, this call is being recorded, and we will welcome you to share anything you want to share to the rest of the world, anything that you want to promote and tell us about. Even though we may not be invited, we would love to steal your ideas. Research and development is only good if somebody will give us something to steal. So rip off and duplicate is very effective. So our guests today, without much further ado, are my colleagues, Jaime Menon, the State Program Leader for Community Vitality at K-State Research and Extension, and Ron Wilson, who is the Director of the Huck Boyd Institute and a faithful attendee at these calls. So I'm going to turn it right over to them as soon as I figure out how to share their screen. Okay. Oops, wrong one, right? What are you saying? The notes?
No,
Not seeing anything.
don't see the slides yet.
Okay. Share screen. There you go. How about that?
Perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take it away.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Nancy kind of already introduced us. I will add that I'm also the co-coordinator of the Kansas Pride program. I'm based out of Manhattan and I serve the whole state. And we're here this morning to talk about the remote online initiative. And with that, I'll let Ron start us out on the next slide.
So on the next slide, you'll see what we're going to cover this morning, and I'll be going through that quickly, but I did want to make two observations about this project, the Remote Online Initiative ROI. Number one, when I first saw the term ROI in this context, it made me think of return on investment, because that's what we hear in business circles. And it struck me that it's very fitting that we share that acronym, because we believe there's opportunity for significant return on investment if we can use the Remote Online Initiative to create new opportunities for our citizens, our businesses, and our communities. The second observation I would make is that we do believe that there are significant opportunities and benefits of remote work, and I'm sure pleased to see a number of our extension colleagues on the Zoom today who have done some outstanding work in participating in this class and working remotely. Let me just toss out a few tidbits of data. Gartner, technology research firm, projected that in 2022, 31% of all workers globally will be remote, and 51% of all knowledge workers, depending on how you define that, more than half of people who are working in this digital arena will be working remotely. And we expect, of course, we saw the shutdown, we saw us in remote work pattern during COVID. Owl Labs projects that 92% or they reported 92% of people surveyed expect to work from home at least one day per week. 80% expect to work from home at least 3 days per week. And then the benefits to workers, employers, obviously flexibility, no commute. And we've seen dollar and cents savings, bottom line savings from people not having to commute, not having to buy gas, not having to buy extensive work wardrobe. We've seen estimates, savings up to $2,000 a year from the, while maintaining productivity, from the employer standpoint, we've seen estimates, very significant estimates, that with reduced cost of office space and so forth, we've seen estimates according to Global Workplace Analytics that a business could save $10,000. Seems awfully high to me. A very significant benefit to employers is the expanded talent pool. We're all hustling, right? We can't find the people we need. And if you look at it from a virtual standpoint, you can expand your talent pool to include people anywhere, in theory. And so we do believe that there are significant opportunities and benefits to remote work, as well as some challenges along the way. So ROI, the Remote Online Initiative, is a response to these opportunities. And today, Jaime and I are going to describe how this got started, how our partnership with Utah came about. She has a link to some impacts of ROI, explain that Kansas is now an affiliate of the existing Remote Online Initiative program. What is required to participate in the class? What are the course offerings that are a part of it? We'll explain the role of teaching assistants, certification as the final result, and then our Kansas partners. So that's our agenda for the morning.
All right, so to set the stage of how it all began, so picture this, everyone, a pandemic. I know it's really hard, but it's easy if you reflect and, if you try. But, truth be told, the first participants of the Utah Remote Online Work Initiative in our Kansas extension system actually came before the pandemic. It was just that it was right on the cusp of it, and then it so happened that it became useful for our system. We got other colleagues to take the course because at the time we were in this upheaval of trying to transition to remote work, and what skills do you need to be able to navigate that and do that to the best of your ability. So this was rather convenient and rather helpful at the time. So it gave a different purpose to attending the offerings. So the Utah state courses helped us at the extension level develop our remote work plans and policies. So that helped us to outline what the expectations were. And it also helped in the areas of some of the important skills that are needed for being a remote worker, such as, productivity, time management, online security. So it really helped us to navigate the online work environment. Now on to Ron.
And I was one of those that took the ROI course a few weeks before the pandemic hit. I was on the course in January of 2 years ago, and just wanted to learn what this ROI thing, what this remote work was about, not knowing that a few weeks later I'd have no choice and that it would become our daily lives when the pandemic hit and the shutdown occurred. Extension has been looking for ways to serve our rural citizens, right? I work in rural development, and broadband is an important piece of that. So, Extension has looked at that. Kansas Farm Bureau has done mapping, see where there are broadband needs. Kansas Department of Commerce has the Office of Broadband. It's done outstanding work. As Extension looked across the country, we found this initiative at Utah State. And I'm going to go ahead and read this quote that's on the screen from our friend and colleague, Paul Hill. People want remote work. They want to live in their rural communities. It's our job to help them figure out how. And so ultimately, Kansas State reached out to Utah State and is now an affiliate of the Utah State ROI program. And so Kansas State is partnering with Utah State, and so that there is basically a Kansas element of this proven track record of the curriculum presented at Utah State. Let's go on to the next slide.
All right, so you may note the QR code at the corner of the slide. We've also put the link in the chat that the QR code is linked to. It is the impact report from Utah State for the remote online initiative. And so these facts and figures really contributed to the why of taking the remote online course for extension and why we felt it was important to Kansas. Aside from experiencing the increased confidence of navigating the remote work experience, we are also very impressed with the facts and figures that we saw from Utah State. So we started to discuss those impacts with Utah, and then we thought, well, why not Kansas? Why not bring it to Kansas? So here are a few of those impacts from that report that we're going to pull out and talk or let you know. So knowledge tests statistically show significant increases from pre and post testing. So that means there was knowledge gained or leveling up of participants. 98% of participants found that their value as a remote worker improved, and many increased their skills for their current jobs. Participants leave the courses feeling more confident in their abilities to communicate, work in teams, manage their professional and personal productivity, and manage their careers. Overall, participants that were seeking remote work experienced a median salary increase of 88%. There was a 55% reduction in total miles driven per month for participants. About 2,460 miles, which equates to about $368 per person participant who found remote work of savings for them. The results also indicated that participants who paid for their enrollment thought that the personal benefit of the course was worth more than the cost of the registration. So this was all while staying in their rural community or even relocating to a rural community. It had been rolled out extensively and initially for remote rural areas in Utah. So most of these facts and figures are based on the rural experience. Next slide, please.
And having said that, while our focus is on, my focus is on rural communities, what we found is that the applicability and the opportunities in the urban areas are really even magnified. Just from a practical standpoint, what are the basic tools required to take the course and participate in the course effectively? If you are on this call, you have what it takes. But even in your communities, there are certain minimum standards, and I'll look at the list from the bottom up. Basic computer proficiency, just the simplest tasks. You can download documents, you can send an email and attach something. The basic computer proficiency is required. But beyond that, to participate, one does have to have a web camera and a microphone, of course, because interaction with team members is a big part of this. And then top of the list, they're reliable broadband. We know this is a huge public policy issue. We know that our policymakers are making progress, are seeking to take steps to invest in broadband. But it's and this is just another reason why good broadband access is important, to have the tools required so our people can participate in education and training on this topic and then work effectively in that context. Next slide, please.
So the courses are certificate courses that combine online interactive workshops, and the online workshops are housed on Canvas, which is an online teaching program where students can work asynchronously, at their own pace, get the work done. And the virtual interactive workshops are once a week, about an hour. They don't go over they give a chance to review the work and work on the online meeting skills that you're building. So specific objectives and outcomes for each part of the course are identified in the beginning of the set modules that are in each course. So I'll outline the professional and then the leader. So in the professional program, it consists of 9 work modules that are, like I said, asynchronous and self-paced. So there's now a module 0, which is getting acquainted with Canvas, Zoom, and Slack, the tools you'll be using. Module 1 is the workday. Module 2 is communication. Module 3 is workflow. Module 4 is productivity and time management. Module 5 is teamwork. Module 6 is compliance and online data security. Module 7 is critical thinking. Module 8 is virtual careers, and Module 9 is remote job development. And so for the leader course, for those that are managing remote workers or teams, that course has 7 objectives. So at the completion of the course, those participants will be able to critically assess their organization's current vision for the future in remote work, create a plan to include culture building and routine operations, develop an effective communication agreement between remote employees and management, design a performance management plan to address common challenges with remote employees, create a conflict resolution chart, develop a change management process to address barriers to organizational change, and design a strategy for addressing common barriers for remote employees' learning and development. So both courses include live interactive workshops, as noted before, that are hosted by Utah State by Zoom. And these encourage the teamwork as well as project management tools and utilizing the new communication tools like Slack, as we noted. They also provide an opportunity for participants to discuss and review the content from the modules in a virtual environment that resembles a real remote team. So our Kansas remote offering as a Utah affiliate is on our website, and that link is in the chat, kansasremotework.com. So you can find what I noted in this slide as the information that are related. You'll find that as well as other information about the courses there. So next slide, please.
And I might add that I took the remote work professional class just to get the basics of learning about operating in a remote context. Some of our extension colleagues, for example, who have responsibility for multi-county districts, I think found the leader course to be especially useful for them, as they had to supervise a set of people in multiple locations and develop policy that would apply to all of them. So, and one doesn't have to take the professional course to take the leader course. In other words, there's no prerequisite. If you're in a supervisory position, the remote work leader course is a natural fit for you. And then in terms of the role of the program coordinators or teaching assistants, I say to participants in the class, you are not alone. You are working remotely, but if you take the class, every participant is assigned to a cohort and assigned to a program coordinator who essentially functions as what we call in Kansas the teaching assistants. So the participant is in the online course. They're going through the modules and the assessments. There's the monthly online interactive workshop, and then working with cohorts and Slack, as Jaime mentioned, et cetera. So the program coordinator or the teaching assistant, just as a teaching assistant would do in an in-person class, is grading the papers, is there to answer questions, is trying to help the participants through the basics of navigating Slack and some other things that I sure didn't understand at first. So you're not alone. And what's more, if you enroll in the class through kansasremotework.com, then you would, or your community participants would be assigned to a program coordinator who is in Kansas. So that program coordinator, and there will be people from multiple states probably taking these classes as this interest has grown. But if you take the class through the Kansas site, there will be a Kansas person who knows the state, knows our communities, knows our situation, who would be the program coordinator for that participant. Next slide, please.
So in addition to hard skills, participants learn soft skills and that are vital to working autonomously and with long distance teams, such as written and verbal communication, problem solving, critical thinking, time management, accountability, flexibility, attention to detail, online safety, conflict management, risk management, collaboration, goal setting, emotional intelligence, and organization. So if the participants complete all of the modules, and that includes any assignments that are contained within the modules, and attend all 4 interactive workshops, and pass each assessment with a minimum score of 80%, then they are approved for certification in remote work professionalism or remote work leadership. So upon that successful completion, the Kansas participants are presented with a co-branded Utah and Kansas state certification of completion to add to their portfolio. And Utah State also offers a discounted membership to Flex Jobs. And the participants are added to an email list that features remote employer spotlights. Next slide, please.
So what's next? I like what Jaime said as we discussed it. Making connections is what's next. We want the kansasremotework.com to connect a resource that is usable to your people, your citizens, your communities. And we want to make certain that this is a win-win for employers, employees, entrepreneurs, seeking potential clients. Part of that outreach is we're in the process of preparing a survey that we hope will go out shortly that will assess the state of remote work in the state of Kansas from the standpoint of potential employees, of employers, from businesses, and from the community perspective. So we hope that'll be edifying to learn about the state of remote work and help identify some additional opportunities for those who are seeking remote work as well as those seeking remote workers. And I really appreciate the partnership of the entities that have joined with us in development of that survey. The Kansas Chamber of Commerce, the Kansas Department of Commerce, the Office of Rural Prosperity has been great. Network Kansas, Kansas Small Business Development Center, and there may be more. But those folks will be helping disseminate this online survey, which we hope to help inform us about the state of remote work opportunities and create more opportunities going forward.
So I'll also add that we're also working to create partnerships to support our Kansas participants concerning mental health and wellness through our extension partners, because as we might know, if you had a remote situation going on during the pandemic, it can be very isolating, and sometimes mental health and wellness, especially physical wellness as well, can kind of drop. So we are looking to work with our family and consumer sciences, as well as the stress and resilience transdisciplinary team that have nutrition, exercise, and stress and health management resources that we can provide and share to our participants post-certification. So with that, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's all say asynchronous synchronicity 5 times. Be glad to stand for any questions.
What questions do you have? Some of you who have been through this course, we have some agents on this course that have done the remote leader. If not to put you on the spot, but exactly doing that. If you have anything you want to say about what your experience was, that would be great. And Pat has a question in the chat. What's been the level of participation in Kansas so far?
So to be honest, at this level of our Kansas remote work initiative that K-State Research and Extension started, at the moment we had done a pilot run. So about, I think, close to 20 of our extension professionals went through the course. So that way, they not only were they using it to develop their local remote work plans, they were also kind of testing it for potential external connections post the course, feeling it out for any participants that we would recruit to bring to the certification opportunity. So our participation has been limited at the moment to our organization, but we are kind of poised at an intersection to start taking on some remote work participants through our remote work offering as an affiliate.
And Jamie has said it exactly right. We've been pilot testing essentially within the extension family, and now we're poised to go forward more broadly. But I also should mention that pioneering work was done in Northwest Kansas with support of the Dane Hansen Foundation. There's a rural and remote initiative in Northwest Kansas, and they've done excellent work. And a number of Kansas participants, I couldn't tell you that number, have participated in these classes from that region with support from the Hansen Foundation. So there is some additional Kansas participation in addition to what's going on here.
I did hear, I mean, not here, when I was at a recent conference, I was speaking with them, Utah State, and they said it was close to 100 participants from the Northwest Kansas. So, so yeah.
Good to remember that. Francis.
Thank you, Nancy and Jamie and Ron. I'm the district director in Southeast Kansas of 4 counties. And just from an employer perspective, I took the remote leader course. So the one that Ron referenced is a kind of a supervisory role. It's been helpful for me with staff in 4 counties. We have about 20 people on our staff, and it's also been really helpful, I feel like, as a toolkit for a modern workforce. We've had a lot of turnover and we've had a lot of hiring going on. And just this week, I was negotiating with the communications manager. And when I mentioned to her that we had a hybrid policy in our district, I think that pushed her over the edge to accept the position. She's a young, recent college grad. And so even though this is a great piece to market to companies that are hiring remote workers or to professionals who want to work remotely, it's also a really wonderful piece to help us navigate this transition into the modern workforce, where we have these employees who want work-life balance, we want to stay competitive, and it gives us the tools and sort of a means of measuring success. Like, how can we actually make this work? How can we make sure that we're measuring productivity? How can we get our people to be able to do the jobs we know they can do 1 or 2 days a week, to take our job, but also to make sure that we're keeping them accountable and we're giving them kind of a good format, offering this certification as a term for having a hybrid agreement, I think is a great idea, and it's worked well for us.
Well, I'll kind of add to Francis's comment, because when we first started at the state level, I, as well as Francis and some other colleagues, were sort of in charge of not exactly rewriting, but updating what was called the telecommunication policy, so that we would be able to more accurately reflect the state of remote work at the point in time that we were all going through this transition. And I will say that it's really interesting, especially if you look at the older remote work policies, how much is not included, like there wasn't any sections for cybersecurity or for parts that, you know, what are the expectations of remote work? How do you do time management, productivity? How do you measure that? So it was a kind of an eye opener for having to update those policies or be a part of making suggestions for updating the policies. So if you had a current remote work policy, it was really good to kind of give a reflection point on what might have been and what you might need to be thinking of moving forward if you're going to be hiring any remote workers.
Any questions or comments? I see some folks who are actively remote working as we're visiting. That's just part of your life. I filled out a ROI questionnaire for Utah State today and thought again about the fact that I work more hours when I'm in my home office because I don't have 2 hours a day of commuting. So I still gain on my family time and gain on productivity both. And it's just such a motivating factor. So, yeah, I love what Francis said about being able to get that person to take your job as opposed to somebody else's job. And that's what we all want and need. All right. Well,
There's a question in the chat, Nancy.
Oh, thank you.
Do the courses cover questions around expense reimbursements for remote workers?
So also at we did have that question when, well, at least in my cohort, had that question, but we were told that usually that's left up to the organization itself because they usually have policies for any type of generally have policies for reimbursement. And that's not an area where they go into exactly. It's just that I think that it's good because it brings up the question of what is included. It does kind of touch on make sure to reach out and ask about what is provided, you know, for your workspace area. Are you getting, you know, a computer? What is provided? Computer, microphone, lighting, desk chair. I mean, it does kind of go into that, but it doesn't specifically talk about reimbursement.
I think that is a great question. And Jamie said it right. The course, it's going to vary so much between customer-client relations, different employers. It's hard to define it specifically, but it really raises a good point. And it's actually part of the survey we're working on. What does the employer typically provide? What is the employee expected to furnish in the process? A great question. And so hope to learn more about that.
But at least, I mean, would I be correct in saying that just by being on the course, you have people to talk with about what is true for them?
Sure.
So you get a community of people to ask the question to.
Absolutely, because then you do find it is, you know, from one extreme to another. It's mostly in the middle. Is that some things are provided, some things are not provided, and they just make those negotiations with their employers.
Yeah. That was a great question. I'm glad we waited for that. I hope we will interrupt ourselves to if we see any other questions. And you can see behind Jaime and Ron the email to reach us at. That'll reach the whole Community Vitality Department. And so you've got our attention at any moment. So we always do sharing during this time. And if any of the partners on the call want to share anything, like I say, how can we rip off and duplicate if you don't tell us what you're doing? So help us with our R&D and share what you're doing, what's exciting for you. Or scary. What's scary for you? What are you about to try?
I actually have something to share. And we're still kind of working out the logistics. I've sent an email to, I think some of you might have seen it, something about Rural Rise. We're putting together a conference with, in partnership with RCAP, which is the Rural Community Assistance Partnership. And so we're trying to put together this event called Rural Rise, which is very much a focus on rural communities, entrepreneurship. There's going to be topics included like access to broadband, and I don't know, I don't think we officially have remote work included in the agenda, but it might come up as a byproduct of broadband and some things. But there is a Rural Rise event at the end of September, and we're in Emporia this year. So I would love to show from the state of Kansas some good support, because this is a national conference. We've only had a few of them so far. This will actually our third in-person conference. We had to cancel a few times with COVID for one of our in-person things. So at the end of September, we'll be in Emporia. Most of the RCAP group is from West Virginia. So I'd really love us to show our support and try to be there. Most of Network Kansas will be there. And I see we're getting the link shared in the chat. So if you guys have any questions about that, let me know. It's up against, there's a KETA conference the same week at the beginning of the week. So it might be a long week for some of you guys if you want to do both, but I'm glad I got to share that event coming up.
Great, Sierra. And if there's anything you want me to share with the folks, I'll put that in the follow-up. Actually, I'll probably just use these links.
Okay, I'll send you something too, actually, if you want like a little flyer and stuff.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Great. I'm so glad to hear that. Who else wants to share something? Oh, I would be remiss not to, oh dear, my spreadsheet lost its link. But we just did 2 grant workshops this week, one in person in Miami County and one sponsored by the Wildcat District. All of the online ones, we have a name on them because local agents host them, but we always have participants from all over the state. So the next one is in August, and I don't, somehow or another, it just got eliminated off of my spreadsheet, but I will put in the events page because that relates to both the next topics, which is next, and the grant workshops are at that events page. So you can see those there. Do we have a grant writing class that deals specifically with nonprofits and churches? And I would say that our grant writing class kind of focuses on nonprofits because that's my background. You know, but it generally is meant to apply to anybody. And yeah. So, well, Elizabeth Berger, I see you there. And our next call is in August, on August the 5th, with Elizabeth Berger from
Sunflower Foundation. Yes, good morning. Forgive me, everyone, for not being on camera. I'm actually in an airport right now, huddled in kind of this dark hallway to hopefully you're not hearing any background noise. This was super interesting. This isn't my forte at all, this subject, but I just wanted to say, Nancy, and to our wonderful presenters, we talk so much about how remote working is important for the younger workforce, but I think the more it becomes the norm, it's great for us older people as well, right? I mean, I'm in the sandwich generation. I can see many of you on this call are, so we've taken care of people younger than us, older than us, and having that flexibility just makes life a little bit easier. So thank you for making this more of a accepted norm rather than an exception in the state of Kansas. Okay, so speaking of remote, this is a time for travel and tourism, and on August 4th, I'm going to be leading the e-call with a panel of different leaders in Kansas towns about how they are using their trails to bring in tourism for the summer months and all the other months in between. Mike Scanlon from Osawatomie for sure will be joining us. He was able to put his last town in Colorado in the Guinness Book of World Records with a stunt. He's just full of ideas about what to do. Even if you don't have a trail in your town, I think this will be a fun, fast-moving, jam-packed with info and idea sessions about creative things to do with trails to bring in tourists to your town. So that is on the dog days of summer. You got nothing else going on, August 4th.
Awesome. Elizabeth, thanks for taking the time and the trouble to be with us. It means so much more when it's coming from.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And I would reiterate what Elizabeth said. I should have said it as much. I am not a new worker, but when I took the professional course, it was a really good affirmation of some things that should be just second nature to you. And maybe they are, but they just remind you to exercise those things, to be deliberate, to be intentional about the things that they're teaching you. And so I agree with her. It's a great opportunity. Well, if you've been on these calls before, you know that I like to end our calls with a thought for the day. And this thought for the day just appeared to me last night when I was listening to a podcast. And it's by Jonas Salk. And maybe some of you are familiar with him. He was the person who almost single-handedly invented the polio vaccine. And he said in a speech in 1967, if we want to be good ancestors, we should show future generations how we coped with an age of great change and great crisis. Go out and be a good ancestor. And we'll hope to see you in August when Elizabeth tells us all about trails and bringing people to our towns. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Nancy. Have a safe 4th, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.